Everyone is familiar with the Lotus 108, the original Olympic-conquering carbon fibre superbike.
But what if we told you there was another?
A bike brand that history has forgotten, but yet is equally revolutionary.
With Tour de France prologue victories and Olympic medals.
This is a hotter.
And naturally, we're going to race it against a modern-day superbike to find out how fast it is and tell you everything about it.
But we also have a third bike today as well. The first ever hotter, but built up with modern-day components.
Like a retro modern hotter. Previously on GCN, we have ridden the Lotus 110, Stephen Roche's Battalion, Le Mans Bellato, Ulrich's Walser, and a giant MCR. And in doing so, compared their performance to modern bikes. And not one has been able to beat a new road bike.
However, we can't talk about super fast UCI illegal carbon monocoque superbikes without also talking about this, the hotter.
Yeah, and if you like seeing us ride amazing retro bikes like this in videos and you'd like to see more, then, well, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, as it helps improve what we do and get us access, well, just to more antiques like this. And it's fair to call it an antique because it's 30 years old.
30-year-old antique, what does that make us? No, maybe don't answer that one. Also, make sure you give the video a big thumbs up as well if you like this bike, and oh my word, I do. I mean, this looks like it's been beamed back from the future. Imagine what it was like in 1993 when every other bike was a skinny steel bike.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's just outrageous. For my money, this is even sexier than a Lotus.
Yeah?
Hotter than a Lotus.
Oh, well, let's see how it rides. You often ride it,
okay,
and then I'll tell the viewers more about it while you're riding it through the power of editing.
We've taken a break from the usual GCN Theatre of Dreams test track, the iconic road from Acton Turdville to Luckington in the Cotswolds here in England. We've had enough, frankly, of its brutal, unforgiving weather and have come further south to leafy Devon, a green oasis of a county whose roads are chock full of tractors, livestock and caravans. Perfect for a full-gas time trial effort on an antique. Let's hope the brakes work. You created this route on Strava. Am I right in thinking you're sending us up and down a 20% gradient?
Don't worry about that. It's Devon. It's just 10 a penny round here. What you do need to be worried about, though, is the cows.
The cows?
A lot of cows in this part of the world, yeah. Anyway, beeps. Beep, 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 beep.
Oh. Oh. I was warned that these forks and this spinagey front wheel are quite flexy in combination. Okay, we're trucking quite nicely at 40k an hour. I'll take that. Whoa. I'm going to descend on the drops. Holy moly, in this crosswind.
The Hotter was originally devised in 1992, and with its carbon monocoque frame design, it was completely cutting edge. And the original bike featured a Lotus 108-esque mono stay design. But this is the production model, which came out in 1993, and to make it more commercially viable, it features dual stays on the rear and dual stay carbon fork as well. And the frame is actually in 3 pieces that then come together from a mould. And it was the creation of a chap called Simon Ask, who was working for a composites company called Carbon Infinity that was making camera bodies, of all things, at the time. As a keen cyclist, Simon decided that he wanted to use this revolutionary composite material to make a bike. And, well, so he did. And the result is this dual stay design with its aerodynamic carbon bladed fork started to rack up race win after race win. First on the domestic national time trial scene here in the UK, and then being used by the legends Graham Mowbray and Chris Boardman. Initially though, it wasn't the whole frame that was being used, it was Hotter's revolutionary lightweight aero carbon fibre bladed fork, because these could be more easily fitted to sponsor correct bikes. So Lance Armstrong's Motorola team ordered a load of them to use on their time trial bikes, and so did the Festina team. And Chris Boardman even actually used the Hotter fork on his ultimate hour record Lotus 108. And the frame? Well, the 1997 and 1998 Tour de France prologue time trials were won by Chris Boardman on the Hotter frame. Although you'll be forgiven for not remembering that, because it was badged up as something else. And, well, after that, the now infamous UCI Lugano Charter banned this and every other exciting looking bike from being used in pro racing, and so consigned the Hotter to engineering labours of love to the history books.
This position is absolutely extreme. So old school. My hip flexors are killing me. Oh my word. That was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measures, perhaps erring towards terrifying. Not only is this like a priceless antique of a bike, but also that flex from the front wheel and the front forks and the gusty wind. Oh my word.
You ready, mate?
Yeah.
You got your hands warm enough?
No.
Beep, 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 beep.
Oh, start. I can't clip in. There we go. Right, let's do it. Big ring, come on. Drop my chain, back on. So, as per the other time trial bikes and bikes of this era we've ridden, bloody neck, these geometry is just so low at the front. It's really aggressive, nothing like modern bikes have, you know, sort of scaffolding at the front end to raise you up, and it's hard. Oh, it feels sketchy, that. Bloody hell. Oh God. Got a bit of a speed wobble then. The front end, noticeably flexy. Might be the fork, but also this spinnegy wheel there, quite flexy. Get on the bars for this corner. This bike, oh God. It's definitely not Di2, this old Campag. Yeah, that's for sure. Oh, 19mm tyres. You feel every bump. I've always wanted to ride one of these. I've just seen them on TV and stuff and thought, oh, they look so cool, but I don't think I look as cool as Chris Boardman right now. Ah, I'm struggling. Oh, I was scared. There's a few bits where I got loads of oscillation through the front wheel, like a big speed wobble coming through that front wheel, and I was just crapping my pants. Oh God.
So what is our modern day superbike then? Well, it is Ollie's Alpecin de Koning Team Edition Canyon Aeroad CFR, a thing of absolute beauty and so different to the Hotter. I mean, there's all the modern tech, of course, like disc brakes, the fact that the tubeless tyres are 10mm wider than the ones on the Hotter. But then what's fascinating is the frame. Now, of course, this complies by the UCI rules, those that banned the Hotter back in the late 90s. But the Hotter wasn't designed with aerodynamics in mind. It was designed primarily to be light and also so that they could make it using the skills and the materials they had at the time. And so that's why you've got that huge monocoque section, whereas here, it's completely different. But also with this bike, you've got the added advantage of countless hours of computational fluid dynamics to refine the aerodynamics of it. And it's given rise to completely new shapes, all these hard edges that are completely absent on the Hotter. I'm genuinely fascinated to know whether this frame design is still faster than that old one. Yeah, Ollie's not come to officially set me off, which is, well, frankly, is a bit rude. Maybe he doesn't want to see me riding his lovely new bike. Right, are we ready? Beep, 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 beep. Oh my God, it feels so weird getting back onto a modern bike after that. Almost like you're kind of darting all over the road. I literally can't ride this, having been on the other one. That's so weird. Incredible how quickly you get used to a bike and then forget about it again. You know what's also weird, right? This being Ollie's bike, the position actually feels, with its turned-in levers, like it's a TT bike anyway. Like chalk and cheese, those two bikes. To the point where actually getting out of the saddle on this to start with, I felt like I had the same kind of control issues, but for the other reason, because it's so stiff in comparison. I was darting all over the road.
All right, mate.
Beat me.
I will, yeah. You enjoy that. Beep, 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 beep.
Right, I immediately feel comfortable and in control and very fast. And I'm higher up at the front end, which counterintuitively, although that might make you think it's slower, can actually make you faster by allowing you to get this more aerodynamic position with bent elbows. The difference in tyre width is huge as well. Running 30mm wide boys on my Canyon, which just makes the ride so much more comfortable.
Oh. You'll get that on the older one.
Yeah.
Right then, so this is it, crunch time, okay? We've got the original frame, literally the original frame, modern wheels, modern tyres, modern gears, modern position. Genuinely, this is going to be fascinating. Right, you ready? Beep, 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 beep. Oh my God, it's obviously a completely different bike, but it is literally a completely different bike. Like the front end is completely different. So confidence-inspiring compared to that other one. Like a rocket ship. Whoa, did you hear that? Bang! I can't tell you how stiff this bike is at the saddle. Like, this bottom bracket is effectively just dangling from the beam, but it doesn't budge an inch or a millimetre. Right then, it's crunch time. Ollie, hit us with some results.
Well, I mean, I was riding quite a bit slower than you, taking it easy today.
Those are your gloves.
Yeah.
And your hat.
So I rode at an average pace of around 31k an hour, sort of 200 watts. I was 21 seconds quicker on the Canyon.
Were you? Now that is uncanny. So yeah, I was putting out a bit more power today, and I was averaging about 42k an hour. I also was 20 seconds faster on the Canyon, but I was then another 20 seconds faster on this one. So does it prove that the hotter frame, the band design, is faster than a Canyon Aeroad?
I mean, people might think it's nuts that was quicker than the modern bike, considering that is 30 years old. But it's not 30 years old, is it? Because the group set on there, the wheels, that cockpit in particular, you know, getting your hands in that high position, big, it's got wax chain on it.
It's got a wax chain, yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, it shows you that position is always king,
yeah,
over a frame.
So basically what we can say then is that we can't conclude either way whether the frame is faster, but it's clearly not rubbish.
Yeah, but I mean, one of the things is in the old style, and what's nice about showing it in this new style is in the old style, with the front end being so low, I was really struggling on it.
Yeah.
Like to hold that position. And then also with the super, I mean, that's got wide tyres in, but the super narrow tyres on that rough road surface, super slow.
Yeah.
Like I'm bouncing around all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, this one is night and day better than that one in terms of front end stiffness.
Yeah.
Like I'm blown away actually by how good this frame is 30 years on.
It's good, isn't it?
There's not many bikes that are 30 years old that are this fast.
Well, I can think of one, right? If you could only have one of these bikes, either this or a Lotus 110, what are you having?
It's a tricky one, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, hand on heart,
Yeah.
that this is a better bike than the Lotus 110. I think this is a better bike to ride, and what I love about it is the fact that it used to have drop handlebars on. Like, this was a bike used in road races. Like, I'm not fussed about time trialing. I would have this frame set and stick drop handlebars on, and I would be the king of the calf ride.
Right, I love it. Well, let us know which one you'd pick, Lotus 110 or a hotter, in the comments section. And, well, we hope you've enjoyed this vid. And if you have...
Are you staying on the
thumbs up.
fence?
Yeah.
Oh! Really?
I don't want to sway the viewers.
All right. I do.
Hotter!
This bike, the Cervelo S3, is part of a dynasty that has changed road cycling forever. Gerard Vrooman and Phil White introduced the concept of the aero road bike back in 2002 and set us on the path we're still riding today.
I mean, you think you know how to design a bike and you think you make a pretty good one, but of course we didn't really know about what it takes to ride a Tour de France.
I mean, we can't blame them entirely for aero road bikes. Someone would have done it eventually, I'm sure. But still, this bike and its predecessors are now a key part of modern cycling history. How did we get from that to this to this? We'll also see just what the difference is between a 13-year-old aero bike and one from the present day. Now, first up, this bike is no ordinary S3. This one is particularly special because it was used in the 2010 Tour de France by none other than Daniel Lloyd.
I was a bit worried it wouldn't fit still, but it's fine.
Oh yes. In his own words,
It's seen speeds that most mortals can only dream of, mainly because it was sat on top of my team car.
although this was Dan's team bike in 2010, the S3 was launched in time for the Beijing Olympics in 2008, where it was used to get second, third and fourth in the men's race, which was won, if you're interested, by Sammy Sanchez on an Orbea Orca. Cervelo had been innovating rapidly. This is the fourth generation of their aero road bike, and the first was only launched back in 2002. But to tell the story, we should probably go right back to the beginning. Cervelo was founded in 1995 by two engineers, Gerard Vrooman and Phil White, who met at McGill University in Canada. Now, as we're told, time and again by Canadians, winters there are proper winters. So it's perhaps surprising that they didn't start by inventing fat bikes or heated saddles, but no, they went all in for an outrageous TT bike. It was the era of outrageous TT bikes, but the Cervelo Baracchi takes the biscuit. Frankly, it looks like a cartoon character shark.
Now, unfortunately, like all outrageous time trial bikes of the 90s, it was put to the sword of the UCI in the sweeping Logano Charter of 97 that outlawed anything and everything. However, Cervelo's momentum carried on. The story goes on with the launch of the revolutionary P3 time trial bike, but our particular tale picks up again in 2002 with the launch of the Soloist.
It's an aluminium road bike that broke new ground with its aerodynamics. The Soloist brought to the party revolutionary tube shapes with NACA profiles, sourced at first, rather unglamorously, from a supplier of landing gear for light aircraft, but later they were custom extruded for Cervelo's exacting needs.
Now, I'm sure the engineering was excellent, but that's rarely enough to convince people to make the jump. So the masterstroke, or maybe even the stroke of luck, was in sponsoring the CSC team for 2003 onwards.
Somebody at Shimano and said, like, who's looking for a new bike sponsor? And they mentioned two. One never called me back, and the other one did, and that was CSC.
They cut quite the dash in the peloton with their bright red Soloist. And you've got to say, aero down tubes provide an excellent platform for very large decals. However, it wasn't all plain sailing for the aero Soloist, because actually the 3 Tour de France stages that were won that year by CSC were all done on a very light, very unaerodynamic R2.5.
I mean, the R25 was more comfortable than the Soloist. And is that important over a 3-week race, or is the, I mean, there's no data on what's better in that sense, right? An alloy aero bike or a carbon round tube bike. And, you know, and if the team was happy, then fine. And if you win 3 stages in your first Tour de France, then you can't say, you know, they chose the wrong bike.
Undeterred, the Soloist project carried on. Vroomen and White clearly believed in aero road bikes, and gradually the team began to largely migrate onto the aero bikes too.
So too was the CSC team boss Bjarne Riis. And that's not really a surprise, is it? Given his propensity for wanting shortcuts.
I mean, Bjarne Riis, for all his obvious faults, I mean, he was really into, you know, the equipment and really believed in the aerodynamics. But he also knew we had a bunch of riders who just, you know, really wanted something more comfortable. And of course they were riding Look before, which was round tube carbon, and then yeah, that's always going to be more comfortable than aero and alloy.
In 2005 the Soloist was made out of carbon, and Ivan Basso nearly used one to win the Giro were it not for a stomach bug that took him out of the running with 3 stages to go. In 2006 the Soloist name was dropped, but the legacy continued with the SLC SL, which shed 200 grams off, making it sub 1 kilo for the frame. And that convinced apparently the entire Team CSC to use them, except for Carlos Sastre. And he didn't want to because it was apparently teeth-chatteringly, bone-jarringly stiff. And so, 2 years on, when the S3 was launched, not only were they looking to make it faster, they were also looking to graft the comfort of the R series onto the speed of the S series. So is it comfy then, I hear you ask? Well, yeah, I think it is actually. Like, the front is a little bit harsher than the back, but neither are teeth-chatteringly stiff. And bear in mind, I've got 100 PSI in my tubular tyres. So yeah, I guess they did achieve what they set out to achieve. I've got to say, like, it is an absolute treat. I'm so pleased Lloydie has dug this one out of the shed and let me ride it. I feel like a Dan Lloyd fanboy too. I remember him racing this bike. I remember being on his wheel, trying to hold on to it. Little did I know that it wasn't his power, it was actually just his flipping aero bike that was making it so hard. I probably would look a bit like Dan Lloyd right now if it wasn't for the fact that my ankles had the same diameter as his thighs.
To look at it up close, it is strikingly different to a modern day aero bike. I mean, for a start, it's thin. It's really thin. And these tube profiles, they're not knacker profiles completely. They have evolved slightly from that earliest soloist, but they're not far off. I mean, this down tube tapers to a really fine point, even to the point where it makes your water bottle cage look hugely bulbous. I mean, that's like an air brake. That you don't get on modern aero bikes anymore. In fact, these tube shapes, I don't think I can remember a modern day aero bike with this kind of classic teardrop profile. They're all truncated aerofoils, and the idea behind that is you get improved crosswind stability, and then also you can design the frame to be stiffer and lighter. But it has to be said, this frame weight is supposedly just 1,050 grams, and I got the whole bike on the scales. You won't believe this, or maybe you will, I certainly didn't, 6.64 kilos, including power meter pedals. I know, crazy, isn't it? I mean, that's a full kilo lighter than the current S5, and it's 600 grams lighter even than Jonas Vingegaard's Tour de France winning Cervelo S5. It's incredible to think that the whole light bike versus aero bike debate didn't really need to exist in 2010. But then it's even weirder to think that 99% of cyclists didn't really believe in aero bikes even in 2010, myself included.
Aero? Pah, what a load of rubbish.
In my defence, I hadn't actually tried an aero bike in 2010, and now I have. I am completely sold. You can feel the difference. And perhaps that's because aero bikes have got more aero. The tube shapes, as mentioned, have clearly evolved. We've got these mega aero one-piece cockpits. We've got no exposed cables at all, as opposed to this bunch of spaghetti on Dan's Cervelo. But the question is, have bikes actually got faster than this 2010 featherweight? I'm ridiculously excited about this test. Firstly, because this bike so far has felt amazing, and I'm blooming interested to see how fast it is against the clock. But also, we're kind of going to live out some fairly deeply repressed fantasies of being Daniel Lloyd. So anyway, I'll leave that one with you. Fellow Daniel Lloyd superfans, all four of you, will note that this bike actually is not in Cervelo test team spec, okay? So they were sponsored by Zip. Dan doesn't have the original Zip wheels because this became his training bike the next year when they were sponsored by Mavic as Garmin Cervelo. So he has a pair of old Mavic Cerium training wheels. So we've dug out these bad boys, which are perhaps not quite as aerodynamic as the Zip 404s he would have had, but are outrageously light. They're the Mavic Cosmic Carbon Ultimates. And they too feel absolutely wicked. So we're going to try and do the best test we can. Dan's original power meter is not on here. Don't know where that one went, Lloydie, but we do have Wahoo power meter pedals. So I'm going to ride at a consistent power on both bikes and see if we can't compare the two. Which one's your money on? Hey, it's going to be flat, and then there's also a climb. I actually don't know. I mean, I'm assuming the modern bike will be faster, but... Beep, 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 beep.
Funny what you notice straight off the bat. Lloydie's cranks are longer than mine. So all I can think of is my feet are moving bloody miles to get the pedals round. Okay, we are fairly shifting. 50 k's an hour. This feels rapid. I feel rapid. Onto the climb now. 6.6 kilos. Is that going to come to play? It does feel sprightly. Frustrating riding to an average power sometimes. Okay, nearly getting to the line. Oh man, that is an absolute pleasure. Okay, and we're there in 3, 2, 1. Oh. There we go. Oh wow. I tell you what, I think it's testament to the bike that actually when you're riding along, there's not that much to say. There's no like, oh, this shifting stuck in the dark ages, or oh, this frame feels so this, that, or the other. It just feels like a stonkingly good bike. And it felt like we were going pretty quick. I mean, the only way my Canyon is going to get it back is by being more aero on the flat and potentially smoother on that climb. The tarmac's a bit crap. So I think this could be a tough race, actually. A lot at stake. Let's go do it. There's a lot of riding on run number 2, isn't there? No pun intended, but that Cervelo felt quick. So what has this one got up its sleeve to go even faster, particularly as a lot of that was uphill, and that Cervelo is feathery. This one, we should say, is Bling party bike spec as opposed to Tour de France spec. So I've got the CF SLX model, so it's one down from the CFR Tour de France team issue bike. Plus I've got SRAM Force on here. Now that gives away nearly 1 kilo in weight to that old SRAM red mechanical rim brake. I've got a lot of extra performance for it, but even so, how much extra performance are you going to get on a flat TT and then a climb? I'm properly interested. I've transferred the power meter, by the way. So I've actually got dual power meter on here now because I've got my Quark one as well, but I've got the Wahoo power meter pedals on. So hopefully that'll mean that they're reading the same. Beep, 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 beep. I'm waiting for an epiphany. Feels good. You can definitely feel this bike is smoother. I've got obviously different tyres with different pressure in, so that they're still optimal. But feels like you just carry your speed a bit. So I wonder whether that will play out up here. Results time then. You ready for this? The modern aero road bike was, perhaps unsurprisingly, faster, but surprisingly, not by very much at all. So the Canyon Aeroad was on average 5 seconds quicker. And I say average, I ended up doing it 3 times on each bike because it was so close. On the flat section, the Aeroad was quicker, but again, not by a vast quantity. And then on the climb, the featherweight Cervelo was able to claw back a little bit of that deficit. Now, as if it needs saying, this test is fraught with limitations, not least the different riding position on the 2 bikes. And so, I say it up front, it is hard to draw any meaningful conclusions over those differences, other than the fact that that old bike is still pretty bloomin' rapid, even by today's standards. And so it made me think, just how bloomin' fast was it back in 2010? Yeah. We need to speak to someone about this, and I know the person.
Hello, who's this? Like an actual celebrity on the video. Dan, right, I didn't feel like I could make a video about your bike without actually asking you about it. And now I've put a stopwatch against it and done some pseudoscience.
How did it go?
Well, So as you know, you know because I WhatsApped you because I was blown away, it is blooming light, that old bike.
Do you know what? It's been a long time since I picked it up, but when I came to bring it into the office and I picked it up, I was like, that feels really, really light.
Like, ridiculously light, yeah. So below the UCI legal weight limit, we'll gloss over that.
Yeah, I'm slightly worried that I was racing it illegally. I'm pretty sure we used to add weights onto those bikes.
Well, they see that's incredible, isn't it, for an aero bike like that. Anyway, and then when I put a stopwatch against it, now we should say again that my Canyon is not a Tour de France race bike. It's not in top spec, and so it gives away nearly 2 kilos to your bike. So your bike, your 13-year-old bike, was faster than my new bike going up a hill. Not by much, but like a demonstrable difference. And actually, it wasn't that much slower on the flat either.
Oh, really?
It was slower, but not as slow as I thought it would have to be.
So an aggregate.
An aggregate, yeah, it was a good all-rounder. Does that surprise you, the fact that it's that rapid?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no, because I think that bike was ahead of the game at the time. In fact, I remember Mark Cavendish saying to me that he felt like we were almost cheating because he could see how fast the bikes were. What he meant by that was that he would be descending next to, say, Brett Lancaster or whoever it might be, and he felt that our team was almost freewheeling away from other people.
No.
That wouldn't just have been the bike. We were one of the first to have the really Aero Castelli kit.
Yeah.
We had the best of pretty much every component, really, so we were very blessed in terms of the bikes and the equipment that we got to ride and race on. But that was his attitude at the time. And of course, since then, lots of other manufacturers have caught up in terms of how aerodynamic the bikes are and surpassed the Cervelo S3. Same with the clothing as well. But certainly at the time, we had a distinct advantage. So I'm not that surprised, and particularly with the weight of it. Going uphill, obviously, it's going to be a bit quicker.
Yeah. I can't help but think back to the Tour of Britain 2010, when you and I were the last two to get across to the split on that day. And I remember being on your wheel and I was only just able to hold it. I remember thinking, like, I really hope we get across soon. And now I know that it wasn't because you were just loads better than me. It was just because your bike and kit was that much faster.
Well, exactly. I mean, it would have been, it would have definitely helped me. But the first ever race for the Cervelo test team, I think I'm right in saying, was the Tour of Qatar in 2009. And we had decent riders, but we weren't the biggest names. Certainly I wasn't anyway. But whilst we didn't win it because we couldn't beat Tom Bonin, I think we had all 8 of our riders in the top 12 or 13 of the general classification. And this is a race that is completely, entirely flat, obviously.
Yeah.
And governed by crosswinds in terms of where you end up. And I don't know what it was, but I would say, how much it was down to morale of the team, which was really great, new team, wanting to prove ourselves, etc. And how much came down to the bike. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we were at quite a significant advantage, specifically in that race, compared to the others at the time.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about all of that then? Get involved in the comments section. I have a funny feeling this one might provoke a little bit of debate. Rim brakes, mechanical shifting, tubular tyres, still really nice to ride, bonkersly lightweight, that kind of thing. Be very interested to read your thoughts on it. And also let us know what else you think maybe we should put these two bikes up against each other. Descending, for example. How rapid is an old Tour de France race bike compared to a modern disc brake equipped aero weapon? Again, let me know your thoughts. And if you've had the experience of riding two bikes like this, if you've been into cycling for long enough, what are your own experiences? Now, huge thanks to Gerard Vrooman for his time. If you want to see that full interview, it's up in its entirety over on GCN Tech now, so you can get proper nerdy. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to him. And also, big thumbs up to Lloydie as well for letting us have his old, treasured, beloved bike. Cheers, mate. We've done it! You asked for it, we have delivered. Possibly the most iconic bike of all time, the Lotus. A bike so fast and so futuristic. The UCI not only banned it, it made them ban everything else as well.
But they've got no jurisdiction here, so here it is. And I'm grinning like a Cheshire Cat because today a childhood dream is coming true. We're actually going to get to ride it and see just how fast it is compared to a modern bike.
Let's do it!
our films on the venerable Battalion, the time trial bike of 1987, and Greg LeMond's Bilato from 1991, we promised to up the stakes again and see what happens if we take another step forward in the history of TT bikes tech to see just how good it is, in fact. This bike we have today technically still holds the hour record. The Lotus 110 evolved from the 108, which is the bike that Chris Boardman used to win gold in the individual pursuit in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics and set a world record in the process.
Yeah, so the difference is mainly that the 110 is, as you can see, a road-going version. And Boardman and the whole GAN team, in fact, rode them in the 1994 Tour de France, including allowing Chris to set the fastest ever prologue time trial, an average of 55k an hour.
Yeah, a record that still stands to this day. Now, this particular bike, once again, belongs to the legend that is Steve Grimwood of Elmy Cycles in Ipswich. So a massive thanks for Steve for letting us borrow it. And without his generosity, videos like this just wouldn't be possible. So if you want to show Steve some appreciation, give us a thumbs up and visit his shop when you're passing through Ipswich. Like our other videos in this series, we have our vintage TT bike and modern aero superbike, the Orbea Orca Aero. Si and I will do runs on both bikes, and at the end, we'll see which bike we were faster on. As ever, we've set up the bikes with our power meter pedals so that we can have power measurement on both bikes. The plan is to ride to a power that is repeatable on both runs so we can get an idea of how they compare. Size up first on the Orbea.
I think Ollie might have gone to have a little bit of quality one-on-one time with the Lotus, so I guess I'm counting myself in then. Beep, 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 beep.
While Si's out on the course setting a benchmark time, let's talk Lotus. So we've actually got an excellent video on the 108 on the tech channel if you want to see that in more detail. But it feels pretty poignant and fitting doing a video about this bike following the recent and very sad death of bike design icon and maverick Mike Burrows. The whole concept originated from him, and he was a man who dedicated much of his life to designing lighter and more aero bikes. So the main differentiation from the 110 from the 108 is that it has been designed for the road, and consequently you've got a more traditional fork on there. You've also got vertical dropouts instead of the horizontal track dropouts. In addition, you've got cables, brakes and gears, which are kind of useful when you're riding on the road.
The Orbea Orca Aero that we're comparing it to is a cutting-edge road bike, super aero, and also decked out with the finest components you can get your hands on. We've got Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 group set, we've got Aero Shimano C50 wheels, and it is just a top-of-the-range bike, but it differs from the Lotus in two key areas. Firstly, it is, of course, a road bike with drop handlebars, not a TT bike. But then secondly, this is designed to be UCI legal, so it meets all of the requirements that the Lotus falls foul of. There is, however, one glaring change to this, and that is the, addition under the down tube. So whilst this bike is UCI legal, you have to remove that bit at the bottom in order to race. What? I got no welcome party either. He really does love that Lotus. Well, in that case, I'll tell you how that one was. Not much to report other than absolutely blooming fantastic. I mean, what can you say if you're riding around on a cutting-edge aero bike? It's fast. The only slightly annoying thing is that for some reason, Ollie has got his Di2 buttons flipped the wrong way. So instead of feeling the benefit of shifters like that, I was flapping around like I had friction shifters on my down tube. But never mind, I don't think that made too much difference. Ollie, you ready?
Yeah.
This is proper exciting, isn't it? You're going to ride a
It's
Lotus.
so cool. It's so cool. Like, it is a dream to get a chance to ride this bike. It's yeah, amazing.
Before you set out, though, I'm going to nail my colours to the mast.
Right.
I don't think that is going to be quicker than the Orca Aero. Okay, like, yeah, you've got mega aero wheels on there. The frame, I reckon, is slightly more aerodynamic. But look at all of this, like, jazzle up front. Now, you know...
There's a lot of gubbins.
I'm not an aero guru, right? But I know that tubes are really bad. Those are very tubular. There's all of these cables. And what is that stem? It's like an air brake there. Look, it's like a... Anyway, good luck.
I reckon it's going to be quicker.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
All right, well, if nothing else, you look as cool as a cucumber.
Do I look like Boardman?
Not particularly, but, you know, I think that's, you know, you look cool.
All right,
go on
let's do
then.
it.
Ready?
Yeah.
All clear? Beep, 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 beep.
The absolutely mental thing about the Lotus 108 is it still holds, in the eyes of many, the hour record. Chris Boardman did the best human effort on it, covering 56.3 kilometers, which incredibly is still further than what Dan Bigham recently did, using all of the latest aero tech.
Here he is.
Oh,
Ollie Boardman himself.
that
on.
was amazing.
Was it?
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, so much fun. Like, I mean, it's rapid, this bike.
is it?
Yeah. I mean, like, the power, bang on the money. And, like, in terms of the same as that. So, I don't know what, I didn't have the timer on. So, I don't know, it's going to be close. But, like, power bang on, and it felt rapid, like.
Right, go on, get off. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. Let me get my helmet on. That's really sweaty.
Yeah, look at my sweaty crotch.
These red Lotus pads are cool, aren't they? Like kind of faux leather, embossed.
With the Lotus logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost makes me feel like I'm actually like on a Lotus, like a car. Hello.
Do you know what Lotus stands for in the car world?
No?
Lots of trouble, usually serious.
It's not often I set off on a bicycle ride like fizzing with excitement. Like,
I know.
I mean, I'm always like loving it, but genuinely like...
I know. I was just raring to get going on it. It's amazing.
Ready?
Yeah.
Count me in.
Beep, 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 beep. And he's off. Big gear.
That is a big gear, isn't it? Oh, it's stiff out of the blocks. Wowzers. Oh. Here we go. I can see my shadow in front of me. It looks aero. My speed's looking good. Oh my word. Okay, I'll take it back. That feels fast.
Good, innit?
Done it, like, that feels, it just feels like it holds its speed, and like you can tell there's a headwind, but it's just not slowing you down. Like it's rapid, and also, it sounds really stupid when you're talking about an iconic bike like this, but actually having the shifters on the ends of your skis,
Yeah.
as opposed to those two other vintage TT bikes where it's on the down tube, even though this is friction, God, how much better is it?
Yeah. The other thing that stood out for me is with it being like a sort of, you know, a beam bike with no down tube, is when I came out the corners and on the turn, and I'm out the saddle, it felt stiff.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like it was like wagging its tail.
No,
Which I thought it might.
Straight out of the blocks, I was like, hold up. I mean, we got to be clear, this thing weighs a ton. Like, we didn't bring the scales of truth today, but I'm guessing this is like 10 or 11 kilos or something. It's an absolute whopper.
When you hold it, it feels like it's made of solid carbon. It doesn't feel hollow.
But it rides like it's made
chunky.
of solid carbon as well, doesn't it? Like, but what, who needs a lightweight track bike?
Boardman didn't.
No.
No.
The fact that this rear disc used to be able to add weight to it to increase the centrifugal force, like...
Yeah, turn it into a flywheel.
That's it. They know that, weight doesn't matter that much on a TT bike, right? Whew. Okay, all right, I'm going to press stop on the old Wahoo. I cannot wait to see the results. Ollie, this feels like a very important moment in cycling. We are potentially going to dethrone one of the most iconic, lusted after, fastest bikes of all time. So hit us with your results.
Right. I was 13 seconds slower
on
this one.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
About you?
To throw a spanner in the works,
Yeah.
I was 1 second slower on this one.
Nah. Oh.
So for me, the Lotus, I don't know how we make sense of that. For me, the Lotus was, fractionally within a margin of a big error, let's face it. But still, I did go quicker on that one.
It's so close between the two, like without any shadow of doubt. I, though, feel that I was compromised on this position. And this ergo stem thing that you say is a windbreak is actually really adjustable, and I could get the front end higher.
That's why it deserves to be on a hybrid bike.
Yeah, I think if I were in a more optimised position on this, akin to the kind of position that I have on my normal TT bike, I'm confident I could go faster.
Yeah.
Than on that.
I suppose because I'm fractionally taller than you, we've got different body
Your legs
shapes.
are longer than mine.
So maybe actually that position is more optimal for me. But even so, it didn't feel good as such.
Yeah.
So what we're saying then is that bike could still be more aero, but you've got to adjust it, and actually both of us fit better on the road bike.
Yeah.
And therefore it is more aerodynamic.
Yeah. I think the other thing as well that helps the modern aero bike is the gearing, something that you take for granted now. I definitely feel like I take for granted, but when you don't have that big range of gears on, like the 1130 cassette and the small jumps between them, and then the instantaneous Di2 shifts, on a rolling course like what we have, you notice when you don't have it. I felt over-geared and struggling to shift on the gearing on this, even though the gearing is much better than it was on the Le Monde bike, because you've actually got the changing happening up on the friction shifters up on the extensions.
Yeah. So what are we going to tell the viewers then? Basically, it's still an outrageously fast bike, but it's not that much better than a modern aero road bike, which is bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Question is though now, what would happen if you now went and did a lap on your Orbea Ordu TT bike?
I'd smoke it.
Really?
Yeah.
Modern TT bike smokes.
I don't even have to do it. I know I'd smoke it, but I'm so dialed in and used to the position on the modern TT bike, and it's tricked out with all the latest tech. The tyres are faster and everything. It would smoke it.
Okay.
But I love this bike. Look at that gap there. Look at that gap. That is special, isn't it?
It's a lovely gap. What we're saying then really now is that you need to borrow that bike from Steve for a long time to get dialed on it. And then we'll revisit this. Steve, how do you feel about that?
We'll talk.
We'll talk later. Great stuff. Right, well, thank you so much, Steve, genuinely, for the loan of your bike and letting us ride it, like properly ride it as well.
Yeah.
That's cool, isn't it?
If you've enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a thumbs up to thank Steve as well. Not much scared Lance Armstrong, but this bike did.
A revolutionary bike that was used by his arch nemesis Jan Ullrich to nearly defeat him in 2003.
But how fast is it, and how does it compare to a modern aero road bike? So far, we've tested Stephen Roche's Battalion,
Le Mans Bilato.
an iconic Lotus 110.
But after the UCI banned that and everything else, what comes next in the pantheon of legendary time trial bikes?
Well, this, a bike so forward-thinking that elements of it are still being copied today, like, well, it's got a proprietary bottom bracket.
Yay! To be fair though, if you could have afforded to spend 10,000 euros on a frame set 20 years ago, you could definitely have afforded a special bottom bracket. But what you wanted to know, and what we still want to know, is just how fast is it? Should you find out?
Yeah.
Jesus, this is quick! Sounds like a rocket ship! Meow!
Now, despite the giant logo on the down tube,
It is pretty big, isn't it?
No. It's not the fact that it's a giant logo. It's not actually a giant.
No.
It's actually a Valser, see, or Walser, because it was made by a chap called Andy Valser from Switzerland, who was actually an architect who turned into a master carbon fibre craftsman. And he first made a bike for Jan Ullrich in 2003 and then continued to make them for the rest of his career. This one, as you may have guessed from the livery, is from his T-Mobile days.
That's right. Now, to find out just how fast that bike is and how it stacks up next to a modern cutting-edge aero road bike, we've returned to GCN's Theatre of Dreams on the edge of the Cotswolds. Now, if you're not familiar with this part of England, it's a wild and untamed wilderness, scoured by frigid winds and battered by brutal rainfall. Frankly, not much can survive up here.
It's a serious test for presenters and bikes. Nothing is harder than the world-famous B4040 from Acton Turville to Luckington and back, all 8.53 kilometres of it.
Yes. Now, first up, I'm going to go set a benchmark time on my Canyon Air Road before we then climb aboard Jan Ullrich's Valser.
And while Si's out setting his benchmark time, I'm going to tell you everything that makes this bike special and why Lance was scared of it.
Was it bugged by US anti-doping? Was it once owned by Dick Pound?
Who's Dick Pound?
He was the boss of WADA. He didn't like Lance. He was out to get Lance.
Dick Pound didn't own this bike. Go on, do your run.
I'll go get my
Take your
shoes
joke
on.
book with you.
You know, the sound of one man bleeping to himself is a bit sad, isn't it? But anyway, here we go. Beep, 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 beep.
While Si is out on course, let's take a closer look at this amazing bike. More specifically, the frame, which is a custom carbon layer that was built by Walser, a Swiss company, or more specifically, Andy Walser. This bike was absolutely cutting edge in its day, and the standout feature of it, aside from its beautiful aero sleek lines, is its width. See, the rear hub spacing on this bike is just 110 millimeters. That is 20 millimeters narrower than what you get on a standard road bike or time trial bike hub spacing. The bottom bracket is just 50 millimeters wide, so it's got a much narrower Q factor as well than what you find on standard road bikes. And this means it can only take custom cranks and custom rear wheels in order to make it work. The importance of making a bike narrow is something that's come a bit back in vogue, as recently you may remember Filippo Ganna's Hour record bike had an emphasis on this too, although admittedly he only had one gear at the back because it was a track bike. He had an 89 millimeter dropout spacing on the rear and a narrower bottom bracket as well. The thinking is that by having the bike narrower, you reduce the frontal area and make it more aerodynamic. But this does create problems. So, as I said, you need custom wheels and custom cranks. The original wheels, which were branded up as Pro, that had been custom made for this bike, actually went AWOL. But the owner, Dan, has made these replacement ones to go in it that look very similar. Actually, if you look closer, you can see they're Zip 808s because they've got the dimples in them. But he's beautifully created these Pro and T-Mobile livery to go on them so that they really do look the part. Of course, Ullrich would have also used disc wheels in certain time trials as well back in the day. But what you've actually got here is almost like a bodge to make this work, and this is the same as what Ullrich had. So it's running 10-speed Shimano Dura-Ace, but he only has 9 sprockets on the back and has a 9-speed shifter at the front. So it's a 10-speed chain, 10-speed chain rings, 10-speed rear mech, but he's only got the 9 sprockets available because one of them had to be filed down and removed so that you could take account for that reduced spacing on the rear hub to make the wheel fit.
So what can I tell you about this bike then, my Canyon Air Road, other than it's very rapid? Well, new Dura-Ace is 12 speed of course, and all sprockets are present and correct. What's interesting, I think, about this bike is that compared to a lot of other modern aero bikes, it is strikingly narrow, like the Valsa, although both the bottom bracket and the hub spacing are completely standard. But I have a feeling this is going to be quite a close run thing, because although this isn't a TT bike, my position on it can be quite aero. My handlebars are only 38 centimeters wide, so when fully tucked in, I feel like I'm pretty aero anyway. But then also, I think this frame may well be more aerodynamic, and similarly, the cockpit area as well. The profile of the handlebar is significantly more aero than the one on the Valsa. So yeah, I still think this might edge it. Roaring tailwind out, stonking headwind back. But it's the same for everyone and every bike.
With run number 1 under my belt, I went and sought shelter in the Fox and Hounds and left Ollie and my bike to their own devices.
Right, it's absolutely freezing. I don't know where Si's gone. I'm going to do my first run on the Canyon, beat myself in. Beep, 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 and we're off.
You've heard about the tech specs, but why did this bike scare Lance? Well, Jan Ullrich missed the 2002 Tour de France because he was banned for 6 months having taken amphetamines in a nightclub. But when he returned in 2003, he did so astride a very sleek, futuristic-looking black time trial bike that was clearly not made by his team sponsor Bianchi. It was a Valsa. Now, in 2003, Lance, if you remember, was going for his 5th Tour de France title, and he was never more vulnerable than he was that year. Jan Ullrich crushed him in Stage 12's epic time trial by 1 minute 30 to get within just 36 seconds of taking the yellow jersey. Now, unfortunately, as you know from history, Ullrich never got closer than that, and so Lance did indeed take his 5th Tour de France title. But this bike stayed with Lance to the point where he actually commissioned his bike sponsor Trek to copy the design. However, legend has it that Lance didn't get on with that narrow Q factor. He felt like it robbed him of power and gave him tendinitis. So it turns out that Lance and I do actually have something in common, a dislike of narrow Q factors. I suspect the similarities end there.
Now, owing to the very different weather conditions, it's pretty much impossible to compare times we do on the course to those we've done in previous videos. Today it's very slow, it's cold, it's rainy, it's windy as anything. So I'm not looking forward to the return because I've got a honking tailwind.
I'm not gonna lie, I feel as cool as a cucumber sat astride this bike. I take it I look as cool as a cucumber. This is so cool. Right. Beep, 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 beep. It makes the most incredible noise. Sounds like a rocket ship. I tell you what, compared to the 3 time trial bikes I've ridden before it, this feels like a proper bike. There is nothing vintage about it, which is just as well, because in these conditions, I don't fancy riding something that doesn't really resemble the bikes that I'm used to. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, but this is my era of Dura-Ace, this one. I remember being given it. I'm gonna ride at 70 RPM, just like Jan. Oh, wow. Might be in the epicenter of Storm Brenda or whoever's rolling in today, but that was so good. Like, I don't care whether this bike was released in 2002 or 2022, that is mint. Such a good bike. No wonder Lance wanted one.
We get to ride some proper cool bikes here at GCN, and this, wow, I'm really excited to ride it. It's this position's pretty extreme though. All right, let's see how we get on. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, we're off.
Jesus, this is quick. This is rapid. So this bike definitely comes from the school of thought that lower at the front end is better. Jan Ullrich's riding position is pretty extreme by modern standards. When you look at his saddle to bar drop, I'm struggling. There's no doubt in my mind that if I tried to do a max power test, I wouldn't do as much power on this compared to my own TT bike because the position doesn't suit me. But that isn't the aim of the game here. I have to do much less power. We've got Wahoo power pedals on here, so I can match whatever I do with that on the Canyon. Riding at the same power, again, it's that thing. The level of perceived exertion far higher. The longer cranks, the aggressive position. Oh my God, my quads are on fire in a way that they don't feel on modern bikes. I feel like I need an umbrella, like I'm some kind of pit crew. Here he is, Jan Bridgewood, or Ollie Ullrich, or Ollie Jan Ullrich Bridgewood.
Oh, it's so grim.
It is, it's like something out of Ice Road Truckers, isn't it?
Oh, tell me about it.
But more importantly, let's not talk about the weather, despite being British. How was it?
This thing is rapid. Like, absolutely, like on that, we got a sonking tailwind today. Going out, like, I was hitting 60k an hour.
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable.
But it feels like to me, like, it sounds really stupid, but it's a proper bike, isn't it? Like, I don't know if it's because I'm getting old, but that feels like a proper bike to me. Maybe like 20 years is the magic number.
This is your era, this bike.
Well, it is my era, yeah. Maybe if a young whippersnapper got on that bike, they'd be like, whoa, what's this? This is rubbish. But for me, that just feels awesome.
Like, it's not, it doesn't feel compromised. Like, it's stiff, it's pretty light, it's aero, the gears are good.
Yeah.
Like, they all work, like.
And the handling is just on point as well.
Oh, yeah.
Valsa knew what he was doing, architect that he was.
Yeah, I mean, a few things though. Like I said, when I was riding it, the position's so aggressive. When I felt like I was fusing the vertebrae in my neck. Like, thank God this is only like 8.5K. If this was like long, I'd be in trouble. Like, it's far too aggressive for me. And the cranks being longer as well, like, my quads are on fire.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, okay, because results-wise, so I didn't ride on power, I rode on perceived effort. And I went full gas on both of them, because that's what I tend to do. And actually, in terms of time, it was identical on my air road to the Valsa. Totally identical, to the second.
Right.
Which is pretty weird, isn't it? But, again, just perceived effort.
Okay, well, if the perceived effort's, the same, I can believe that, because, so I did ride on power, and the difference is huge.
Is it?
Just in 8.5K.
Which way?
This is way quicker. Like, way quicker.
That dog is surprised as well.
But like, you'll see, like, when you look at my position riding it, like, it's way more power. It's not sustainable, but it's way lower and more aero. So for the same power output, which was sort of 265, 270 normalized, I was like 34 seconds quicker on this than that in just 8.5 kilometers.
Whoa!
Like, monstrous. But in terms of what you were saying about riding on perceived effort and it being the same, I can believe that, because although my power was the same on both bikes, the perceived effort on this was way more. This felt so much harder. Like, I was comfortable on that. This, I was in pain. Like,
Right, two questions then. Firstly, position's way more aero on that, even if it's not more sustainable. But what about the bike? Do you think the bike is more aero with that narrow Q factor, and which actually I didn't even notice, weirdly, and also then the narrower dropouts?
I mean, that would be a nice thing to know. I think I don't think there's a huge amount in it.
No.
And it's funny you should mention the Q factor. I didn't notice it.
No, I totally forgot.
I didn't notice the Q factor.
Well, actually, to be fair, those Wahoo Speedplay pedals, the
little bit wider,
have got a slightly wider Q factor.
Maybe it compensated.
It compensated. All right, second question then. What do you reckon is more aero, that Lotus 110 or that?
I think I want to ride that Lotus again.
I think the Valsa is more aero. Like, it's just little things like the bars and stuff. That Lotus was a dog's dinner.
The comment section will eat you alive for saying that.
No, but it's true. It's true.
We need to justify that statement. There was a confusion, I think, about the Lotus in the Lotus video in the comments, because a lot of people don't realise that it is a bit of a dog's dinner, that 110. Steve Grimwood would attest to this, because it's not the definitive Lotus. It's the 108, the track bike, is the Lotus, and the 110 is kind of a road compromise, and consequently it's quite messy in places.
It's basically all about the aesthetics, the 110, isn't it? It's to make it look like a Lotus, but actually it's got none of the good Lotusy bits, apart from the fact that the down tube's gone missing.
Well, I think what I want to do is we'll put a call. If anyone's got a Lotus 108 track bike that they're willing to let us ride in some capacity, please reach out to us.
We won't bring it to the Cotswolds, because as you can see, it's a savage and utterly grim place, and it's not somewhere you want to put a 108 through its paces. Right, we've got to say a huge thank you to Dan from Vintage Velos for lending us this incredible piece of history. He's got a YouTube channel, Vintage Velos, so make sure you head over there, give it a subscribe, because he makes videos about the cool bikes that he's got in his collection, of which this is just one. So yeah, thank you, Dan, especially because it's raining and you've let us use your priceless heirloom.
Yeah, right. Can we get inside and get the hot drink?
Yeah. It's on days like today where I kind of think that maybe it'd be nice to make videos indoors.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up. Bye.
Ooh, got wet, Sammy.
We have ridden some of the fastest time trial bikes in history, from Ulrich's non-giant giants via Boardman's Lotus to Le Mans Bellato, and from our rigorous and utterly peerless in-house testing, beep, 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 we have concluded that a modern aero road bike is quicker than even a fairly recent state-of-the-art time trial bike, which frankly came as a bit of a shock. So then we thought, well, what's next? What about climbing bikes? Surely the simplicity and lightweight of a bike from 25 years ago will trump oversized carbon, fat tyres, disc brakes and electronic group sets that we see on bikes from today when fighting gravity, which is cycling's ultimate and purest test. We are going to find out. We just need the right bike. When thinking about the ultimate climbing bike, we need to first think about the ultimate climber. Who had the panache, the swagger, the best bandana, and the least hair? Yep, Marco Pantani. For many a cycling fan, Pantani epitomises the perfect climber. His exploits were legendary, his life like a Hollywood screenplay, and his end like that of a troubled and tragic rock star in a blizzard of cocaine, an unashamed tragedy in the truest sense of the word. His heyday, though, was 1998, the year before the Armstrong era began, and in it Pantani won both the Giro and the Tour de France, a feat not repeated since. His bike as well is, to this day, still the fastest bike up legendary climbs like Alpe d'Huez, and by quite some margin. Now, unfortunately, Pantani was 1.72 metres tall, so 14 centimetres shorter than me, and therefore his bike would be microscopic. However, fortunately, one of his loyal climbing domestiques, Riccardo Falconi, was almost exactly my size, and even more fortunate still, I borrowed his bike. Or at least this was his bike. It's now another in the collection of Dan from Vintage Velos. But this very machine was used in both the Giro and the Tour that year to support Marco on his way to victory. Clearly, it is a Bianchi team issue, custom made Mega Pro XL. What a name. Now, this, unfortunately, didn't go quite as fast as Pantani's, but if you're worried that it lacks a little bit of that rock and roll swagger, then don't be. Falconi was actually thrown out of the Giro in '98 on the final stage because he had too many red blood cells, and he also then went positive for EPO just as soon as a test was invented 3 years later. Those are the days, eh? Most importantly though, whilst it does differ from Pantani's in one or two subtle ways, because this is a Mercatone Uno team issue bike, it is very similar to the big man's, or at least little man, I guess you could say. Now, before I dive into more detail on this, what will I be comparing it to? This, which I feel like doesn't really need much of an introduction, a Pinarello F with Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 12-speed wireless group set. Now this actually is the F9 model, so it differs from the F that's used by Ineos Grenadiers, for example, because it's got a different grade of carbon fibre in it. The penalty, 85 grams. To put the Bianchi to the test, I've had to leave the GCN Field of Dreams test track because it's flat. So I've swapped the bleak Cotswold wilderness for the towering mountain range located also in the southwest of England called the Mendips. Some of these peaks reach upwards of 320 metres high, and my road will climb up towards the summit of one of them over 4 kilometres.
It could probably do with being 3 times as long and twice as steep, but it's the best I've got, and actually I think it's plenty tough enough to see whether there is a difference between these two bikes. The only issue is it's a little bit busy. Anyway, I want to know which one your money is on. I'm going to go with the F9 first. I've got Wahoo power meter pedals attached. The gradient does vary quite a lot on this climb, and I'm conscious that if I'm riding to a set power, it's going to suck any kind of flair or panache out of the bikes. So I'm going to go for 5 watts per kilo on the steady bits and then just see what happens when it gets steeper. Okay. Beep, 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 beep. While I'm heading up there, I reckon I've now got a few minutes to tell you about this weapon of a bike. 1998 was pretty much the peak for aluminium bikes in the pro peloton because the Armstrong era began to cement the position of mainstream carbon just the year after. But Pantani really used aluminium to his advantage, so all his frames were custom made to his exact specification by Bianchi using his own personal selection of 7000 series Dediceer tubing. His frames were rumoured to weigh less than 1,000 grams, which, to put it in perspective, is just 50 grams more than my Pinarello F9. However, durability was definitely sacrificed on the altar of lightweight. Apparently, Pantani went through 30 frames during the 98 season. That's basically like 1 every 2 race days. And also, despite the fact that this was custom made by Bianchi for its best race team, the welding on this bike looks like it was done by someone who was counting down the minutes till lunch. Frankly, I think even Hank could have done a better job. Now, one point to note on this tubing is that the down tube looks like it's been optimized to be more aerodynamic, which is really cool, and it was not something that I expected, but apparently that's what the Mega Pro part of the name refers to. And the forks, as you can see, are made by Times. Those are carbon forks, team issue only. On the bike, we've got Campagnolo record. There was no super record in 98. 9-speed, Campagnolo were the first to get there. This lacks the enormous gears of Pantani's. He used 54-44 chain rings and an 11-23 cassette, which I guess he needed when he was going up Alpe d'Huez at warp speed. I've also not got the climbing wheels. So Campagnolo made super light Electron wheels that year. Dan does have a pair, but he says that every time he uses them, he breaks a spoke. So we've gone for the Aero Chamal option, and they are absolutely breathtakingly amazing, quite frankly. Now, other points to note, we've got a Selle Italia flight saddle on there. Pantani was the only one who was allowed the Il Pirata model. And that ITM Big One stem, Pantani was the only rider that was using the yellow one. All of the domestiques had black. Pantani's bike was rumoured to weigh just 6.96 kilos, so just shy of the UCI weight limit. So there was a rule, thankfully, that Pantani didn't break. Now, for many people, this bike really embodies what a road racing bike should look like. It's slender, it's felt, it's pared back, it's simple, and I've got to say, I absolutely love it. I wasn't sure that I would. I'm not a massive fan of Celeste, definitely not when it's paired with yellow, but in the flesh, so to speak, it's absolutely breathtaking. The question is, though, how will it ride and how fast will it go? I suspect I've probably nearly finished on the Pinarello by now, so not long to wait. Not far from the top now. Going full Marco Pantani. On the drops. Big ring. Out the saddle. If even only for a short time, feels good. Okay. Might have got a bit carried away there. Even without Brico sunglasses and a bandana, it's hard not to fancy yourself as a Marco Pantani on a climb like that with a tailwind. Here we go then, riding a piece of history. I've got to say, I am properly excited. This is cool. And actually the bike is in near perfect condition, so no excuses. Before we start, I've got to add some ballast to the bike to, of course, compensate for the fact that I'm riding a Pinarello F9 as opposed to the team issue Dogma F. So I'm going to do that with 85 millilitres of water. Oh, nearly. Oh no, that's 90 grams, hang on. That'll do, 87 grams. There you go, that's the difference. Right, ready? Ah, shit, I've just drunk my ballast. Right, okay, never mind. What's 85 grams between friends? Okay. Beep, 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 beep. First impressions. First impressions are good. This is good. Oh my goodness. I feel like a climbing god. Presumably I look like one with this bandana. Can I keep it in the big ring? That's the question. Nine-speed campy for the win. When people try and explain what bikes feel like to ride, I think they often try and make it sound like they're sort of quantitative statements, like it's stiffer or it's more comfy, but no one ever talks about the emotion. And that emotion comes from the way a bike looks or all the kind of images associated with it, like Matthew van der Poel on his Canyon Air Road, or Geraint Thomas and Tom Pidcock on their Pinarello Dogma Fs. And this bike is positively dripping with emotional associations. Watching Marco Pantani do extraordinary things on a bike just like this.
But perhaps the most extraordinary feat of all was stage 15 of the 1998 Tour de France, where he turned a 3-minute deficit in the overall standings into a 4-minute lead in one epic solo breakaway. Attacking with 55k to go, he forged on alone through torrential rain and destroyed the field. And with it, the yellow jersey, Jan Ullrich.
There is one last test for this bike. You ready? Full Marco. I tell you what, I never knew that I had a repressed fantasy of riding up a climb, wearing a bandana and Brico glasses in the big ring, pretends to be Marco Pantani. But there it is, I've just unlocked it. And that felt good. Ah, there we go. I thought it was about time to dispense with the bandana, so fantasy's over, unfortunately. Hats off, though, no pun intended, to this bike, which has absolutely blown me away. I didn't think it'd be rubbish, because, it's not that old, 25 years, but it was absolutely brilliant and a joy to ride. You've come here, though, for the results, the time difference. Now, full disclosure, I averaged 10 watts more on this bike. I think it's fair to say I got a little bit carried away with the Marco Pantani fantasy. But the time difference, nevertheless, was 2 seconds. The Pinarello was just 2 seconds faster on our little test climb, which has really surprised me, to be honest with you. As I said, 10 watts more on this. Heart rate was another 5 beats higher. But that is not very much at all. More than that, though, it's got me thinking, one of the reasons why I love climbing on bikes is because it's not actually fundamentally about the speed at the end of the day, because we are, sadly, none of us able to go at Marco Pantani speed. And so it's more about how we feel when we're climbing. And that's where the emotion of a bike, be it a Pinarello F or a Bianchi Mega Pro XL, kicks in, because they make you feel great whilst you're climbing hills, no matter what speed you go up. And that's why I just think climbing's better than time trialing at the end of the day, because you can feel the difference that aerodynamics makes, and you can measure the difference, and that's all there is to it. No one's ever felt good doing a 10-mile TT, but climbing hills, that is where it's at, and this bike is fantastic for it. It's with reluctance, Dan, that I hand this one back. Thank you so much for letting me borrow it and letting me ride it properly.
It's the only way to ride it.
Yeah.
The Passo Croci Down. At 8.5 kilometres long with an average gradient of 7.8%, it's a nice climb, but it's nothing to write home about. It's never been decisive in the Giro, for example. But legend has it that it was the scene of a pivotal moment, not in a race, but for cycling as a whole.
We're getting near to the top now, and it can't come any sooner. Oh God, look at my cadence.
Were it not for the Croci Downy, then I'd not be riding this, but this. It's just a shame that this pivotal moment in cycling couldn't have occurred on a climb that's bathed in year-round sunshine. Let's rewind a little bit. How has one climb changed the whole of cycling? Well, Campagnolo, Tullio Campagnolo.
So legend has it, Tullio Campagnolo was leading a late autumn race over this road in foul conditions in November 1927. In those days, changing gear meant removing your wheel and swapping between one of two cogs. However, the snow had frozen his hands and he wasn't able to remove his wheel. Shouting, "Bisogno cambia qualcosa di drio" into the wind, he set about doing exactly that. It translates as "something must change at the back." He invented the quick release, and from there, the modern group set. What misery has he helped us escape? Well, I'm going to find out just how hard was climbing before the invention of gears. Wish me luck.
You may notice that I'm not riding a real 1920s bike, but John Cannings has done an excellent job of accurately recreating one. Now the intention was that Cy would come here and ride this, but two things have meant that's not happening. Firstly, over the years at GCN, Cy has broken a lot of priceless historical artefacts.
We might have a problem, Mike. No, I think we've got a real problem.
And it was considered that it was no time to break any more. And the other reason is that, well, Cy is allergic to the rain. But fear not, because this bike has all the hallmarks of one from the era. So, we've got a rubbish, heavy, flexible steel frame. Tick. Weird handlebars. Tick. Really, really crap brakes. Tick. Toe clips. Rubbish. And I've got gears though. Two of them. And they're both massive. Meaning that I'm just grinding away up these horrible gradients. The early sections of this climb average just over 10%, which is considered steep by modern standards with modern gearing. But on this, there's something else. I'm kind of learning that you just have to pedal differently. It's all about strength and just trying to turn the gear over. But it's definitely slower and it's more painful. I'm just going to have to hope that the gradient eases a bit so that I can keep going and make it to the top. Or I might just die. Back in the day, they would have never have made it up climbs like the Angleroo or the Mortirolo. Not because they were lesser athletes, far from it. Just because with this gearing, it would have been impossible. They would have walked. The legendary Campagnolo moment came in the Gran Premio della Vittoria, and not the Giro d'Italia. But it's worth talking about the Giro d'Italia of 1927 to give some historical context to the invention. The Giro that year was won by a certain Alfredo Binda, who had incredibly impressive career stats. 41 stages of the Giro d'Italia and 11 Grand Tour victories in total. But what's all the more remarkable is the nature of the race then. So in 1927, the Giro is 3,758 kilometres long, and that was spread over 15 stages. In 2018, when Froome won, it was 250 kilometres shorter and spread over 21 stages. Now, it gets really stark when you realise that Binder's average speed was 26 kilometres an hour. And that meant that his average time per stage was 9.6 hours. If you compare this to Froome in 2018, well, his average speed was 40k an hour, meaning that each stage was just over 4 hours. In total, to win the Giro, Binder rode 55 hours longer than Chris Froome. And this means that, well, the Grand Tours back in the day perhaps had more in common with the ultra endurance events we have now, like the Transcontinental. An amazing feat. Amazing. At the top of the climb, there's a monument to Giulio Campagnolo. I'm going to pay my respects when I get there, if my knees don't explode. Right, I'm gonna do a gear change now to show you what they had to do back in the day. So on the back we've got these wing nuts, we've got a cog on this side and a slightly easier cog on this side. It's completely pointless. This one's like what, a 16 and this one's like a 17. Good range. Oh God, it's stuck. And see, I'm finding it really difficult now to get that unstuck, and this is exactly the problem that Tullio Campagnolo had. His hands were cold, my hands were cold, and we're on the same climb. There's something very poetic about this. Now I need to push it out the dropouts to get the chain back on, if I can. Now I'm just trying to tighten up this wing nut on the back, on both sides. God, this is difficult. Well, I can tell you that now I've switched into my bailout gear, it feels positively magical riding up this climb. For God's sake. There's Tullio's monument. Oh God, that was really hard. I don't think these brakes are very good at going downhill either. Can I swap back to my bike now, please? Thank God for that. Well, I'm sure it's probably heresy to bring a SRAM-equipped bike to a monument for Campagnolo, but I'm sure Tullio would approve of some ETAP action. Although it is slightly ironic that my bike doesn't even have quick releases on it, it's got through axles. Sorry about that. Now, when we think back earlier to our story about Campagnolo's light bulb moment, the fact that his very words are recorded in history should make you immediately slightly sceptical as to how much of that is actually fact and how much is poetic license. That scepticism could be well placed. According to research by the eminent cycling historian David Herreley, there was no snowy Gran Premio della Vittoria in 1927. And Campagnolo wasn't even listed as a favourite in any of the editions of the race in the 1920s. More damningly than that, according to Herreley, there isn't even a patent for the quick release in the 1930s. Campagnolo does have them, but they're for smaller improvements to the original design, and the same is true for derailleurs after that. However, let's not deny Campagnolo his place in history. He was a visionary, a true innovator, someone who took existing ideas and made them better. He's also responsible for creating the concept of the group set, something we couldn't imagine cycling without today. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this video, if nothing else, just for how cold and wet I got making it. And if so, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to GCN. And to see another video where we take on the epic Passo di Nivolette, the climb from the Italian job, then click down here.
Custom steel frame, Campagnolo Nuevo record gears, Cinelli bar, stem and saddle, and painted in the iconic Fama white and red. It was quite the journey to get here, but the idea was to build a bike from 1969, but that is at the same time brand new. Sounds strange, but it turns out that it is possible with expert knowledge, craftsmanship, and also uncovering a treasure trove of brand new 50-year-old components in the process. The reason for making this was to answer the question once and for all of just how much bikes have improved over the years. Because you see, the trouble is with riding your typical vintage bike is that it'll be way past its best. Vintage bikes are not like bottles of wine that improve over the years. They're more like GCN presenters, that they steadily decline with age. This though, this bike is as good as it ever would have been. I don't think Eddie Merckx would have ridden a better bike. Now, if you want to know how it rides and how fast it really is, like I said, we've got a film over on GCN Plus now, but right here, we're going to put it through one of its toughest challenges yet. Can this skinny steel retro bike, complete with 50-year-old gears, of which there are only 10 and they're all absolutely enormous and far too big to even contemplate riding up a hill, actually make it up our local killer climb, or hill from hell? A mile at an average of 10%, but the kick in the nuts is the wall, 25% for several hundred meters. It's frankly hard enough on a modern superbike. In fact, it's so steep for so long that given I'm at the top of it right now, I don't really fancy putting my 50-year-old brakes, brake pads and rims to the test. But, well, I suppose I've got to. I last rode this bike in the rain, sacrilegious though it sounds, and I've learnt that you need to moisturise saddles. It's like sandpaper now. Right, I'm putting off the evil hour. Wish me luck, that was my toe clip. Come on, we can do it. I'm in! Okay, it's starting to get a little bit steep now. I'm going to try feathering the brakes, so they don't get too hot. I'm still alive! The one upside to having only 10 gears, all of which are absolutely enormous, is that I'm not going to have to change gear mid-climb. I'm going to start on my easiest one and hope that that's easy enough. So it means I won't have to faff around with my down tube shifters, because that would probably be disastrous. There are one or two things I'm worried about. Firstly, have I got the leg strength to keep the bike moving up there? But secondly, are these 50-year-old gears actually going to be able to withstand that kind of effort? Because if they give out, that's going to really hurt. And if they don't give out, and my knee's going to give out instead. Well, we'll find out soon enough, won't we? Let's go for it. My fastest time up here is just under 8 minutes. I think I'm going to aim this time, well, probably just to not get off and walk. Right. Beep, 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 beep. Uh-oh. I might need a run up. I'm in. I'm in. Right, hang on a sec. Okay, I'm good. Right, I'm off. Okay, here we go. This is already, this isn't the steep bit, and it's already pretty darn steep. I've also got a slight problem in that I'm using mountain bike shoes, but I could really do with something just to hook onto the inside of the toe clips so I can pull up on them. So at the minute, my feet will just slide out. Funny noise. Don't think it's my knees yet. God, I'm already out of breath. It's starting to get a bit steeper now. Oh my goodness, my calf muscles already. Oh no, my back wheel's broke. Oh, I've had a mechanical. I'm not even on the steep bit yet, and my raw power has pulled the back wheel over. So it's rubbing on the frame.
That's why it was feeling so hard. I knew it, I knew it. Horizontal dropouts are rubbish, let it be said. They are literally just the worst. Right. I'm not going back down to the bottom, no way. Another little kicker. Oh God. This gear is absolutely enormous. I think I've got 42 at the front and 21 at the back. Oh my God. There's another car coming. I'm gonna have to go straight for a bit. Oh my God. I can't tell you how painful this is. My arms. Oh God. Literally. Come on. Come on, pipe cleaners. You can do it. You can do it! Eddie Merckx never had this problem. Oh my God! Nearly there. I'm nearly over the steep bit. Oh, I did it! It survived! Oh my word! I don't know whether you're as surprised as I am, but I can't believe it's my biceps. Look at the size of them. How did they not withstand that level of torture? Oh God, well, fair play to the bike. Those gears did not give out. There was quite a lot of torque going through those pedals, even if I do say so myself. That was absolute borderline as to whether I was going to make it up there. If another car had come at an inopportune moment, I'd have been off and walking. It was only zigzagging that allowed me to get up there. It was too steep for too long. It just makes you realise what absolute giants of the sport racers from 50, 40, 30 years ago were.
Shimano Dura-Ace has long been considered the gold standard of bike components. Bikes with Dura-Ace on have won 18 of the last 25 Tours de France, if we include Mr. Armstrong. But how did we get to this point?
2023 marks the 50th anniversary of Dura-Ace, and the story of it is one that every cycling nerd, and even some normal people, need to know. So we partnered up with Shimano to tell it, and to help, I have got some stunning bikes to ride. Sean Yates' 711 team bike, a Lance Armstrong era Trek OCLV, one of Mark Cavendish's actual Tour de France stage-winning Specialized McLaren Venges, which might be a little bit small for me, and my own Pinarello, which could have won something, but hasn't.
Let's wind back the clock to 1973, the year in which Pink Floyd released The Dark Side of the Moon, the Sydney Opera House was completed, the first ever mobile phone call was made, and Shimano released Dura-Ace, their first group set aimed at high-performance road racing, something that was completely new to them.
They had already had a lot of success in the US, supplying derailleurs and 3-speed hub gears to the American behemoth Schwinn. However, they did know that in order to crack Europe, they needed to have some success in road racing. And so the Dura-Ace project began.
Now, why the heck is it called Dura-Ace, though, you wonder? Well, apparently the name is a combination of duralumin, which was a specific type of aluminium alloy used in the first edition of Dura-Ace, the word durability, and then also the word ace, just because. Who doesn't want their group set to be ace?
I think it's fair to say that that first generation of Dura-Ace very much looked like everything else available at the time, and for good reason, because us cyclists even now are quite sceptical of anything that looks and is new. But Shimano realised that in order to really get their foot in the door, they needed to work with a pro team. But they came up against a very narrow-minded, very dogmatic and very Eurocentric peloton. They did, however, manage to find one team that would work with them, the Flandria team from Belgium, who happily took the group sets, but on condition that Shimano listened to their feedback and then implemented changes, which actually, when you think about it, is kind of the blueprint for how Shimano's been working with teams ever since, basically. And they were both rewarded with a Tour de France stage win that year and second place in the Men's World Championships.
So what were those earliest innovations then? Well, they started small, literally, with an 11-tooth sprocket in 1978, but it wasn't until 1984 and this 7400 group set that they hit the big leagues. And it was because of this. Yeah, they added clicks to shifters with Shimano Index System, or SIS. Prior to this, levers and derailleurs had been able to move freely, and they were held in place only with friction, meaning that you, the rider, had to manually adjust your gears on the fly. But then by adding clicks, Shimano simultaneously not only sped up shifting, but also dramatically reduced the amount of rider input required.
Oh, this is such a treat. I love riding bikes with historical significance. Sean Yates is a flipping legend, and this was his bike. Amazing. Now, back to the job at hand. I have, it's got to be said, spent quite a bit of time on friction shifters in recent years, and whilst they still have their die-hard fans, the fact is, SIS, the addition of that click, gear shifting, it's a part of cycling, right? But it's not a process that I particularly want to labour over. And so that click just meant you didn't have to give it a second thought. It sped things up and it made it a more satisfying process as well. So for me, it's a huge innovation. It's got to be said, by the way, I'm not going to shift into the little ring because of a tribute to Sean. Now, it's fitting that this 7400 is on a 711 team bike, because like Shimano, 711 were also responsible for just broadening that very Eurocentric peloton. Alex Steeder was the first North American to wear the yellow jersey in 1986, and then in 1988, Andy Hampston was the first American to win a Grand Tour, and also the first rider to do so on Shimano Dura-Ace. We've actually got a cracking documentary about that 88 Giro, and it's utterly epic conditions over on GCN Plus, so you should go and check it out.
The next big innovation was the creation of STIs in 1990, still part of that long-running 7400 group set. And in it, Shimano moved the gear levers from the down tube up here to the brake levers. Now, if you thought index gears were a step forward, this enabling riders to change gear without taking their hands off the handlebars was basically revolutionary. I mean, if you think about it, for the first time you could change gear whilst riding out of the saddle. For the first time you could change gear whilst sprinting, even while braking. It was a total game changer for pros and mortals alike. Now, many of you will recognise this bike. It is a Lance Armstrong era Trek. Sadly, it's not actually one of Lance's. Rumour has it that most of their team bikes were sold to pay for drugs, and those that weren't, I suspect, were probably burnt at the stake when he confessed to doping in 2013. Now, fitted to this bike is Dura-Ace 7700, the successor to 7400. On the face of it, it perhaps lacks some of those big developmental steps that the predecessor had, but it still packs a punch. It's 500 grams lighter than 7400. I mean, imagine that. We're so used to trading in a single gram saving here or there. If Shimano debuted a new group set that was 500 grams lighter, it's unthinkable by today's standards. Most of that weight saving comes from the crankset and the bottom bracket. So Shimano debuted with this group set their hollow tech technology. So for the first time, the crank arms are themselves hollow and the bottom bracket axle as well. And it shed a truckload of weight.
What are my impressions of this one then? Well, it's funny because this is my era. This is when I joined the road cycling party. And so I was expecting it to be like a blast from the past, but it's really not. Despite having spent countless hours on a group set exactly like this one, on a bike exactly like this one, it's not bringing back any memories, which is so weird. But I guess it's like 20 something years ago, but anyway, let's not go there. Two things have jumped out at me jumping off Yates's bike and onto this one. Firstly, that despite this being one generation later, and despite the addition of STI levers, Shimano clearly kept the ergonomics the same between brake levers with no gear shifting in and these new STIs. I guess to stop people feeling like it was too big a jump in terms of innovation. But they do feel so similar, even down to the little pointy bit on the back. Not a good thing in hindsight, given where we've got to with ergonomics now, but still very interesting. And the second point, I was saying about how this innovation allowed you to shift whilst riding out the saddle and shift while sprinting. But what's really noticeable is that whilst you can do that, the shifting is not as crisp and as smooth as in the present day. So even though I can do shift right now, there are times when you do have to let off the gas a little bit to help ease the shift. It's just kind of what you had to do, but then kind of forgotten about that aspect in subsequent generations. I mean, it's pretty smooth if we're honest, but not quite at Dura-Ace Di2 levels.
Have a look at this. A Mark Cavendish team bike from 2011. We have skipped a generation of Dura-Ace, as we said. 7800 came before this one. It debuted a strikingly new look crank and changed lever ergonomics. But the next real step forward, the next big one, is right here. Dura-Ace Di2. Digital integrated intelligence on this, the 7900 version. Now, Shimano weren't the first group set manufacturer to go electronic, but it's fair to say they were the first to do it in a way that was both reliable and improved performance. Pro cyclists didn't all make the jump immediately though. Mark Cavendish's team bike from 2010 has mechanical Dura-Ace on, but by 2011 he had made the switch. I mean, crucially, Di2 was lighter than the mechanical version as well as being faster. And Cadel Evans, you remember, won the Tour de France that year, and he became the first rider to win it using an electronic group set. And Mark Cavendish took home the green jersey as well as a gazillion stages on this very bike. Now that first generation of Dura-Ace Di2, you can see, has that external battery. It hadn't yet migrated to its hidden place in the seat post. And you'll also notice as well that Cav's got an SRM power meter on there. Shimano hadn't yet got a power meter for Dura-Ace. It was still in development, but it wasn't until the next generation that we saw it.
The inner cycling fan in me is ridiculously excited to be riding this bike. I mean, talk about history. It's incredible. And in terms of how it feels, it's like we've stepped into the modern era with this bike. I don't know what it is. Perhaps it's a combination of deep section carbon wheels, but certainly the levers now just feel right and comfortable. And then the Di2 shifting, I mean, it's so good. Although it's improved over the last 2 generations, I mean, no wonder Shimano didn't have much of an effort convincing pros to use it. It's just outrageous. Also, as a complete aside, this is the first time I've ever used a Pro Vibe stem, beloved of sprinters the world over. I've never needed one. Firstly, because my sprint is crap. And secondly, because my arms are far too weedy to warrant it. But I have never, ever used a cockpit as stiff as this. Turns any pothole into a sledgehammer blow. But my goodness me, if I could win a stage of the Tour de France, I'd have used one of these for sure. Now here's an interesting thing about Dura-Ace 7900. It was the first time the group set didn't have completely polished silver components on there. There was this dark anodized finish. These cranks, incidentally, are from the previous version. And it's a really important moment because for me, nearly 40 years after the start of Dura-Ace, it was when Shimano really got into their stride with leading the way in terms of aesthetics as well. And when you think about it, what the Dura-Ace group set, and particularly the crankset, looks like pretty much sets the tone for race bikes over a 4-year period. It's like one of the most hotly anticipated parts, and there must be so much pressure on the designers to get it right. This was a good one, 100%.
In 2016, the world was aghast that Dura-Ace had gone black. Apparently, the black graduated design coming from Japanese inkwash painting expresses the flow of power. This represents a commitment to expression distinctly Japanese. Took that straight from their website. Now, interestingly though, that was not the first time that Dura-Ace had been black. Oh no, there were several iterations in the earliest years where you could buy a 2-tone black and silver Dura-Ace group set. Oh yeah. You could be forgiven for not knowing that, but it is true.
You do sometimes hear murmurs from the corners of the internet that tech innovations have become less significant somehow on the more recent generations of Dura-Ace. But even with a tiny bit of hindsight, it's quite clear that that is not the case.
In 2016, we had Dura-Ace hydraulic disc brakes for the first time, complete with utterly tiny lever bodies, which somehow they had managed to engineer everything into. There was a power meter as well for the first time. Synchro shift meant that your Di2 could be changed to be semi-automatic. Gear ratios continued to evolve, responding again to the needs of pro riders. An 11:30 option was added. Even the mechanical version improved with a new front derailleur design. In 2017, that group set, 44 years after the first, completed the Grand Slam at the Tour de France. All stages and jerseys were won using Dura-Ace, with Marcel Kittel even taking 5-stage wins on a bike with disc brakes. And then here we are with this latest one, 9200. We have got 12 speeds, so double the amount of gears that we started out with 50 years ago. The shifting is wireless, so no cables and not even really any wires to speak of either. We have got the fastest shifting ever and the smoothest shifting ever, because Shimano have refined all of the complex architecture of ramps and pins and chamfers on the cassette and the chain rings. We've got 11 to 34 cassette options, despite Pro Cyclist going faster than ever, and almost incredibly, despite 50 years of improvements, there is no mechanical shifting option at all. Shimano simply said mechanical shifting doesn't meet the criteria of their Dura-Ace level anymore. The world has moved on.
Of course, it hasn't always been plain sailing over the last 50 years, and there is one generation of Dura-Ace that is now incredibly rare, Dura-Ace AX. So it was released in 1980, and it is the most futuristic Dura-Ace ever. It was designed to be as aerodynamic as possible, but it suffered for being released 30 years too soon. So legend has it, Shimano built a wind tunnel in order to be able to test it. Bike manufacturers had to change decades-old manufacturing techniques in order to be able to fit it, and even the marketing materials look like something out of a sci-fi film, albeit one that is rather familiar to us today. And it was, by all accounts, a commercial disaster, but I have heard it said that it laid the foundations for Shimano's later success, because all of their rivals suddenly had a fear of being left behind. And so they quickly re-engineered their products, which took its toll financially. Whilst I've tried really hard to get it today and failed, I have seen it before. It is the most prized bike in the founder of Canyon, Roman Arnold's collection, where it serves as a symbol to him of innovation and the quest for making the best products possible, irrespective of the outcome. Having ridden these 4 vintages of Dura-Ace today that span over 30 years, it is incredible to experience how both simultaneously so much has changed, but also in a way so little. I mean, the process of riding each bike is of course the same. The speed with which you're propelled down the road is ultimately about how much power you can get from your legs, and the efficiency that you get from a chain drive system kind of feels the same. I mean, it's a brilliantly efficient system, but yet also at the same time you can really feel just how much more refined your interaction with the bike has become. I mean, the amount of feedback that you get from the brakes and how little input you need to put into shifting now, that means that the process is basically subconscious. And then also there's the ergonomics of your levers and how they've improved, and the broader gear ratio that means that you can spend more time in an optimal cadence on a wider variety of roads. It's quite mind-blowing really. And whilst if at any point over the last 50 years someone had put a stop to tech innovation, I think we'd all be happy with wherever we ended up. But as a cycling nerd, I've got to say, today has made me even more excited about what's potentially going to come in the future. I've got no idea. If you do, get involved in the comment section down below. I'll be very much looking forward to reading those.
So far, we've tested Stephen Roche's Battalion,
Le Mans Bilato,
a Lotus 110,
and Jan Ulrich's Armstrong scaring Valser disguised as a giant.
To find out which iconic vintage bike is faster than a modern-day aero bike.
So far, none have been, but what's next? This, which is what exactly? An aero road bike so forward-thinking that it was, wait for it, banned by the UCI.
Yes, the sports governing body in their sweeping and tyrannical reforms laid out in the 96 Lugano Charter banned this so hard that few people have ever even seen or heard of this mythical beast.
The Giant MCR, the original mass-produced aero road bike. Without the UCI, is this what road bikes could, or indeed should, look like?
A question we will answer shortly, because the UCI has no jurisdiction here in Acton Turdville.
Turville, I think.
Sorry, Turville, yeah. Anyway, we're going to ride it like we stole it and put it head-to-head against a modern UCI-legal aero bike.
Is this one gonna be faster? And more to the point, should we all be thanking our lucky stars that the UCI did indeed ban this
Bike? Let's find out.
For the record, we haven't actually stolen it. The owner, Stuart, is just over there.
In our last video in this series, we looked at a bike that was raced as a Giant, but wasn't actually made by Giant. Whereas today, we've got a bike that was genuinely made by Giant, but wasn't allowed to race.
No, does have a Giant logo on the down tube though, doesn't it?
I mean, it's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's also quite unusual. More on that later. But first, the most, well, interesting thing about this bike is the frame, which was in its day totally radical.
Totally radical. Now, to find out whether this is faster than a modern day aero bike, we have once again returned to GCN's Theatre of Dreams on the edge of the Cotswolds. So now, if you're not familiar with this part of England, it's a bleak plateau with a volatile climate on which a few brave souls managed to scratch a simple living from the earth. Like Jeremy Clarkson.
It's a cruel testing ground for bikes and presenters alike. Nothing is harder or more punishing than the world-famous B4040 from Acton Turdville to Luckington and back, all 8.54 kilometres of it. 4 people have ridden this segment. One of them took 1 hour and 15 minutes, so we think they probably stopped at the pub. Anyhow, we're going to ride this bike as fast as we can. Si's going to go out first, and then by the magic of television and YouTube, I'm going to tell you all about it while he's riding it.
Run number 1 then on the MCR. Now I've got Wahoo power meter pedals attached. The idea being to maintain a consistent power on both bikes so we can draw some kind of comparison between the two. Now, I've got to say, I feel like we finally made it. We've got an actual person on our imaginary start line to provide the beeps. So Stuart, when you're ready, take it away. Beep, 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 beep. That was perfect. Oh.
The bike is made from a whacking great carbon monocoque. None of it really resembles a tube. You've just got these massive, deep sections everywhere. And the idea behind it was to take the undeniable performance benefits of the prohibitively expensive Lotus and bring that to the masses. So in 1997, you could get this bike for just £2,000, or roughly $3,000 at the time, which in today's money works out at £4,000. Not only is it an aero road bike, which in 1997 was an alien concept, it has other features too, such as internal cable routing of a similar design to Cervelo's, which came nearly a decade later, and an integrated headset, which was, for a mass market bike, ahead of its time. It was actually designed by the legendary Mike Burrows, the creative genius behind the Lotus bikes. But the design process was actually started by our official timekeeper today, Stuart, who began it as an undergraduate project when he was a student. So we've actually got a full video over on the GCN Tech channel going through that story and the process and how this bike came to be. So make sure you check that out if you want to know more. It's pretty interesting.
Another intriguing aspect to this bike was it was only produced in one size. The idea being not that it would only fit people who were 178 centimetres tall, but that actually it would fit everyone, which is bonkers really, and even more bonkers when you think that this was made in an era where steel and aluminium road bikes were made in 1 centimetre increments. Mike Burrows though was a huge advocate of compact frames. He felt that longer seat posts were more aerodynamic and they were more comfortable, and then the stem that was on this bike was adjustable for height. So theoretically, everyone could fit on this bike. The reality is though, that the further you get away from that ideal medium size, whatever that is, the more compromises that you would make. So if you needed to fit a super short stem on, the handling would be mega twitchy. Whereas if you were really tall and you had a really long stem, the handling would be more like sailing a ship. But it wasn't laziness that they only made one size. This was all about being cost efficient. So one size meant one carbon mold, also meant simplified production. And that, as you heard, was reflected in the price. Now fortunately, I'm very much in the fit window of this bike, and I can tell you therefore how it was supposed to feel. And actually, it feels really good. Like the handling, as always with bikes in the 90s, is completely bob on. It feels really good. There's a disconcerting clonk every time I go over a bump, but I think it's structurally sound. I think the main thing is that despite being a huge slab of carbon fibre, it's really flexy. So the front end, I don't know whether you can see that. Well, I think a lot of that comes from the stem actually, and the skinny little handlebar. Because under power, it feels all right at the bottom bracket, but maybe that's just because the handlebars are wafting side to side by a good few centimetres. It is comfy though, that's for sure. That's really taken me by surprise. Like really comfy.
Is it aero? Well, we'll get an idea from our test runs, but I mean, it looks pretty aero, it looks pretty fast. Look how narrow the seat pin is front on. And well, the silhouette of it definitely resembles the triathlon Ironman world record setting Cadex bike that's been ridden by, what's his chops? Blumenfeld, that geezer. This aero does come with a weight penalty though. It's 1,825 grams for the frame, which is around 1 kilo heavier than the frame on the Pinarello F that we're going to be riding against it. Yeah.
Ah.
Go on then, how was it?
Well, it feels blooming nice to ride. It does, like, it's like a proper road bike, and like with that old school racing geometry, so like a short back end, long in the front, big stem, big bars. But I'm not entirely sure it's that quick. But I was having a think, so I think a lot of that might be down to these wheels, which I would imagine are as aerodynamic as a bus.
And the tyres.
So should we swap them out?
We could try.
If we try swap them out for your run and see whether or not that makes a bit of a difference. I'm also intrigued, can we get the scales on it? You got the scales? I have a feeling you're going to have needed to go to the gym. What? Yeah, 2 hands. It's a two-handed job.
9.6.
9.6. I don't know whether I'm surprised or not about that. I mean, that is quite a weighty road bike, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a good 2 kilos heavier than
Than the
a normal
Pinarello.
road. Well, yeah, and a normal road bike of that era. Those wheels are not light.
Didn't Matt Stevens win the national championships on these type of wheels?
I think he might have done. Yeah,
A bad workman always blames their tools, Si.
that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get the other wheels in then and see what happens.
Go on then. Yeah, let's do it. If the front fits and the back doesn't, are you going to ride it with one deep section in?
No.
Look at that. The bike has just got 6k an hour faster, Ollie. Wouldn't you say?
I think the rims are a little bit wider, so the brakes are a bit more powerful now.
All right, mate, you gonna go for it?
Right, Stuart, if you can do the honours, give me some beeps.
Beep, 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 beep.
Position-wise, I feel quite a bit more stretched out than my bikes, quite a bit longer and lower. Also, this classic same thing we see on all these old bikes, wide handlebars. But it feels all right. I thought it was going to be really flexy, but actually, it's pretty good. It feels pretty slow, but then I was accidentally in the little ring. I was like, why am I running out of gears? Oh, that'd be why. It's an important point though, it's like, there's less feedback and the lever throw is not as good on older gear systems.
How was that?
Yeah, all right, yeah, I mean, I was slow, but I was riding at a lower power than I normally do when we do these. Taking it easy today, feeling a bit tired. It don't feel that quick.
No.
That's my first That's my first impression, yeah. But we'll see. It's time for the Pinarello.
Pinarello time.
Run 2 on the trusty Pinarello. Stuart, if you can do the honours.
Beep, 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 beep.
Something that's instantly noticeable when you ride the same road back to back is that the modern bike is just so much smoother. You know, what proportion of that is down to the frame and what proportion is tyre width. I've got 28s on here. It's impossible to tell, but it's definitely significant. Riding with myself today, it's aiming to hold 230 watts on both runs. It's looking good so far. All right, your turn.
Yes! More bike riding. Let me have it. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, bloody hell, that's a big gear. You know, we talked about the wheels and swapping them out, but I also think a lot of the differences between these bikes are going to be other factors like modern tyres and Ollie's incredible high maintenance but performance effective waxing of chains, narrow handlebars. I feel like the odds are stacked against the MCR through no fault of its own, really. Just being older. I feel like that about a lot of things, really, personally, but whew. Oh,
You all right?
yes, rather nice little bicycle you got there, mate.
Yeah, I like it, yeah.
Particularly like the choice of chain loop. Very efficient. Right,
Should we get warmer and work out what's going on?
I was going to say, let's crunch some numbers. Right then, should we address question number 1 first? Is this faster? What was your time, Ollie?
So on the Giant, I did it in 14:54.
Okay.
That's like 230 watts. I was taking it easier this week. But on the Pinarello, I did it in 14:35.
Oof.
19 seconds quicker. It's not much.
That's not much, is it? Not much at all. Well, so I was fractionally slower, or the margin of victory of the Pinarello was slightly bigger, 26 seconds. I did it in like 14,
Still
12,
not
and
much, is
13
it?
something. No, it's not. And bear in mind, I had the slow wheels in as well.
Well, it's just mind-boggling when you think, you know, what a bargain this bike was back in '97. £2,000, $3,000, like.
Yeah. Well, and as I was riding along, I was thinking, well, you know, these wider handlebars, that's accounting for a bunch of watts. There's the fact that your wax chain is probably 89 watts more efficient at 200 watts. So there are lots of like smaller things that add up on the Pinarello, which makes me wonder whether or not this frame design is actually faster. What do you think?
Oh, we'd have to like get it in a tunnel or something, or get someone to do some computational fluid
in to
dynamics
part
or something.
2 wind tunnel testing.
Yeah, but it's intriguing, isn't it? I mean, you think, well, the modern bike, the modern Cadex tri-bike, it does look remarkably sort of similar in the shape, the silhouette. So, you know, and that's at the Ironman world record. So,
well, there you go. So food for thought. Potentially, this is actually on a similar kind of page to a modern aero bike. Does that mean then that bikes should look like this if it wasn't for the UCI?
It's a big thing, isn't it? I think it's one we should ask the audience, because, you know, I like the classic triangle shape of a bike.
Yeah.
But that is dictated to by the UCI informing bike design by their rules. Everyone wants to ride what the pros ride.
But no one races, not really.
Yeah, like maybe like 1% of people are actually under the jurisdiction of the UCI. Like the rest of us, we could all ride stuff like this if we wanted to.
Yeah, and do you know what? I feel like increasingly there's a lot of cyclists that are looking for different, unique bikes.
Yeah.
And so I wonder whether the door is slightly open for a manufacturer to come in there and go, you know what? Rip up your rule books, have a load of this. Because that is nothing if not distinctive.
Well, that's the thing, they only really do it, you only really see it with triathlon bikes at the moment. But yeah, like you say, a road bike, like a drop bar bike that was totally illegal but absolutely rapid, I mean, I'd probably go for it.
Yeah, like, I mean, I can hear the marketing spiel now. It's like the illegal road bike.
Yeah, I'd go for it, yeah.
Yeah. For the record, I wouldn't be seen dead on a triathlon bike.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
No, not yet.
Yeah.
No.
All right then, well, so conclusions. First of all, this is rapid in spite of it being 20-something years old. And both of us are open-minded as to riding bikes like this on the road.
Yeah, but let us know your thoughts.
Absolutely. Also, I'd actually like to let us know your thoughts on what that really weird white stain is on Ollie's bib tights, because I've been looking at that all day and not wanting to think about it too much.
I was waxing my chain. It's chain wax.
It's chain wax.
Chain wax.
It's a lovely thought.